Linn is a technical architect, Copilot solution manager, and Microsoft MVP with overall 15 years of experience in Dynamics, starting from CRM 4.0. His expertise shines in Dynamics customer engagement, where he customizes and extends solution across the Power Platform. Linn is also passionate about leveraging the Microsoft technology to drive the impactful solution. So let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you,
Over
Darnie.
to you, Linn. Yeah.
No, I don't know what to talk about in my second slide. For my first introduction. But yeah, just kidding. Yeah, it's really pleasure to have present in this New Zealand Business Application Summit. I used to present every year in person when I was live in Wellington, and now that I moved to Brisbane, Rami invited me to present and join us and moderate this online session, which is a really great opportunity. The session that I'm going to present today is about the ultimate guide to building modern apps on Dataverse. So given that my background is Microsoft CRM, that's what I've been doing my whole career, and I have seen a lot of people doing some things not really right, and some of the things that you can't really fix down the line. So I just want to give compile all the items that I have put aside in the notes, and here we go. The session is about 50 tips in 50 minutes. As Darnie mentioned, before we jump onto the session, we'll just take a moment to highlight our sponsors today: Olympic 33 DXC Technology, where I used to work, and H2R Technology, and Microsoft. Without the sponsor, this today's event is really gonna be tough to manage for Rami and the team. As Darren mentioned, my name is Linn. Before that, this slides, if you can't wait until end of a few days for Rami to share the slides, you can scan this QR code and download the slide now. Just because in each of these slides I have this URL at the bottom, which will explain further about the tips that I mentioned, because there's no way I can cover 50 tips in 50 minutes in depth. So if you want to know more, or even if you didn't attend, just watch this recording. You can download this slide and go through more details about my blog posts or other MVPs or other community blog posts or Microsoft documentation. So I'm currently working at Delta Insights and all these blah blah blah. If I'm not doing platform dynamics, I just play games and watch anime for fun. You can follow me on X, and this is my blog post URL. So the first thing that is been a while but still not officially supported. So I have clearly stated here, it's like not officially supported means it's not recommended anywhere. I'm not sure how one of this community member found, and he blogged about it, and then everybody just blog about it, and it's kind of like a known secret. But so far I've been using it for over the last 9 months, right? And that's no issue so far, and it's pretty good because I believe that is where Microsoft is going to invest in the future, like dark mode and theming. And it's important for us to understand and make sure that our applications are all these themes compliant. For example, look at this cats icon. So it's not really, it's just a gray icon, so it doesn't really have a contrast in the white background or a black background. So for those kind of things, you only notice when you turn on the dark mode. So that is an interesting part. So all you have to do is put piece of flag URL parameter in this URL, and then your model-driven app will be rendered in the black mode. So you can find out more about that URL in this blog post. And another thing that I always teach to my juniors is like how they can easily navigate and open any table, any record. So it's like, okay, I want to open the table that's not part of the model-driven app. And now that the advanced find is changed, I can access it either. So all you can need to do is this: you just update this ETN parameter with the logical name of the table. And let's say I want to open the system user table. You just put a system user. And then if you know the particular GUID, you can open up the record ID. Or if you, this is for entity, the page type is entity type, record is for the form. And if the page type is entity in the list, you want to see the view of the list, you can change it to entity list. And if you don't want to muck around with the URL, you have if you have a privilege to install the browser tools, you can install the Level Up or Dynamics 365 or Power Apps browser extension. Over there, if you click on this navigation tab, there are two options: Open Record by ID and Open List. Exactly the same. It will prompt you the same entity logical name and the GUID, so you can download it from here. And one of the things that I always ask my team to do it when they do the configure in this project is make sure you always have the consistent columns in the views. So for example, this one has really well-defined columns in the active records, and then the user click on the inactive, like nothing configure. So you might say, oh, I have like 7 or 8 views in this particular table. Like I can't like easily just go and configure each and every view like that. So in that case, you can use the view layout replicator. That's one of the tools in the exam toolbox tool. And you can use this to just select one of the views that the source, like the one that you well define, and then you can just copy it across those multiple views. So that the tool can be really handy when you want to do it in bulk, so that you don't have to manually find each and every views. And another tips related to the view is the condition parameter. And let's say I want to have a view where I want to see the appointments in the future, like the appointments show from today and upcoming appointments. But there's no such parameter like condition as like greater than today. So we need to, when it's greater than, and then we need to find a specific date, but the date always changing. So we need something more generic one. And in that case, you can use the next X years as parameter condition, and then put 99 or like 999, whatever it's in the very far future that the data cannot exist. So in this query, it will return all the appointments which happen today, or with appointments in the future, which is within the next 9 years. And one thing that triggers me when I like take over the projects and like get into the project which are in progress is all these puzzle icons. Like it's really hard to see like all these puzzle icons. It's not really it's just default icons when you don't define the table icons. I know like it's a bit tedious to like find the right icon and then upload it as a web resource and then map it, and it needs to be SVG, and also make sure that it works well in the dark mode and all these things. So that can be like quite time consuming. So most of the consultants will just skip it. But if you use the icon engine in this exam toolbox tool, it just do all those things in like a few clicks. So all you need to do is you just select the table. For example, I select ABC, and it just search with this your table name and return some result. So if your table is invoice or event, doctor, nurses, and it will just show relevant icons. So you don't even have to search, go through the internet and find the royalty free, which are not copyrighted. So it's quite easy. And then you have an option to add it to this solution afterwards, and you can name it in the particular web resource name in the folder structure, the virtual folder structure. So speaking of virtual folder structure, I prefer my web resource to be named with a folder structure. So let's say if you don't put any slash, it will just like this, right? So my publisher prefix plus the web resource name. And it's not really, it can be quite messy when it comes to like a lot of web resources in your project. So what's recommended is to have a proper folder, like the publisher is a root and then slash and then the folder name. So it's you can have icons, scripts, you can have a separate HTML web resource or any configuration images. So by doing so, one of the benefits is if you frequently use the exam toolbox tool, it will just show properly in the folder structure. And also make sure you set the extension of your file in the web resource name, because when you save it and export it and unpack it as a solution, it will show up in the proper folder structure. And also it can be just click and open as a GS file, for example. We can open it directly with the VS codes. If you don't put the extension, it will just be like an unknown file, and you need to specify the application that you wanna open this. And speaking of those JavaScripts, sometimes we'll have to use the debugging the JavaScript. Sometimes it's not working. You want to see at which breakpoint it's causing the thing. So my suggestion is, instead of the most common and most of the people do, is just put a debugger in the code, and then they just save and publish and run it, and then and it will stop working, and then they remove it. And chances are they forget to remove, and if you forget to remove, if you run a solution checker, it will complain that you put those debugger consoles in your production script. So instead of putting a debugger, what you can easily do is you can just run the dev tool of your browser. Just if it's Chrome or Edge Chromium, press F12 and run it, and go to the sources tab. Once you're there, you just like do a global find. So global find is like Control-Shift-F to show up this this section of this browser console, developer console, and then what you can do is you can find a particular variable name or function name that is unique to your script, right? If you search like form context, there are like gazillions of form context scripts. Some are out of the box and some are your scripts, so you can't really find it. There will be result will return like thousands of lines. So it's easy to find. For example, I have this particular method called change form title, and then I search it, and it comes up with this particular file when I click it, and then I got it. And then once you get that, you can just put a breakpoint there, and then you trigger it, right? So if you want to try it in onload, yeah, you trigger the onload by clicking on the refresh button. Not the whole browser refresh, more like this refresh button within the smoldering app form. Or you can just, if it is on change, you can re-trigger the on change event of this particular script. So it's better. Is my one of the thing is like my preference also, and I also see it as more of a better practice that is registering event handlers in the onload event. That's particularly so. For example, you have like onload and on change event of particular fields, and you have a save event. So you can always configure those in the form designer to into the and in the each component. And so if you click on the field, and you can specify the event handler of this on change event. But that is okay for the implementation point of view, but when it comes to support or when it comes to like troubleshooting, it always easier for another developer to go through and see, okay, this particular change form title is called from onload, or this auto number on change. So you have this holistic view of everything, all of the events just by looking at the one script file. So that's the benefit of registering all event handlers on node. Otherwise, you need to go and like click through the controls to find where is this event being called, or you need to use one of the exam toolbox to find what are the event handlers registered for this particular form. So that is not a really ideal solution for troubleshooting perspective. So it is really good to have all the event handlers registered in onload. And it's not like you can register every and single events within the form designer. Like you can register on load of the form, you can register on save, you can register on change of this, but there are some events that you can't even possible change the register this event. So I will go through that in this slide. So there are multiple form load events. Like some of the very first one is the one that we are really familiar with, the form load event. It happens when you finish initially load, and after a new record is saved, when it's created. So when you create a record, and once it is saved, you update one field and save again. And at this time, the form onload event is not triggered anymore. And that's where you need to, if you want to trigger in those events, you need to explore another load events, form load events. So the other form load events, you can really register it on the form designer at all. You have to register it in your script. So you might as well register everything in the onload event of your script. So another event is form loaded event. So if you want to do something, if you want to have a really performance taking time, like fetching some data for that render in your second tab that the user doesn't have to see straight away, but it takes a really performance impact. You can use this form loaded events, or if you want to choose some of the things like, let's say if you want to trigger for the update or set or read the data from some of the controls, let's say the form component control, right? So the form component control is the control where it is showing the data from the lookup of the parent records. And that is not really rendered completely when the first form on load event is called. So for those kind of script, you need to add this form loaded event. And another is form data on load event. So this is this runs in the initial load, is called on the data refresh, and is when the data is refreshed, if there's any changes. So that's a scenario that I mentioned earlier. So if you want to run a script when the user saves the records after saving the records, but when it is refreshed, and then you can use this form data on load event. So everything you can find it in this Microsoft documentation. And sometimes you have to like check the in the onload, right? So you want to check the value of one field and disable another field. So it works well in the onload event, but sometimes what happens is the user clicks on the deactivated button and the form load is not working anymore, or if you just open the data and then the condition match and it's try to enable the field. So even though the form is an inactive state, if your script enforce to enable that control, it will enable. And what happened is the user can go and update the data. And then you would argue that, oh, then there's no save button, so there's no harm, like whatever the user update the field, it doesn't really matter. But what it matters is if there is an autosave. So if the user changed the phone number in this deactivated form, just because this field is enabled by the script, by checking the condition, let's say if this account number has a value, enable the phone. If this empty, disable the phone, something like that. And then the user accidentally update the phone and navigate away from the record, and the records autosave, and it will trigger the value updated will be captured. So there will become like data inconsistency where the data is supposed to be inactive and not read-only, but the user is able to update it. So in that case, it always good practice to check the form type, allow the user to only update the field when it's enable the field field when there's a form type is create, update, or bulk edit. Another thing that I learned from one of the community blog posts is there is a way to run a JavaScript code when you first load the model-driven app, because normally you don't have an option to register it, like or a sitemap or this kind of views and all these things. And so there's a side panel feature that Microsoft introduced a few years ago, and then you just want to, instead of using it in a particular form, if you want to use it at the home page, you can run it at the model-driven app onload event. The caveat is that this onload event is just that Microsoft use internally. that we can find it in some of the Dynamics 365 apps, but we don't have there's no proper documentation, and which means it's not really supported. So you can still use it at your own risk, but it can change anytime because it's not really well documented, and Microsoft doesn't say anything about it. But if you want to do in a more supported way, you have an option to go with the global script on the global tab. So this is my sample solution in this blog post that I mentioned. So when the user log in, they see in the banner, okay, you have how many overdue tasks. So it retrieves a number of overdue tasks in the web request, retrieve multiple requests, and then show it as this global message. So in order to achieve that same thing, we need it in the either driven app front load or somewhere we can run the script. So the solution that I did back then is I put a button, like a hidden button, global tab. The global tab is a part of the application ribbon, and that is where you see all these Copilot advanced file settings, and you can add your own custom button there. So, and then you can just hide it. But in that button, you can run this enable rule, and enable rule will call the JavaScript just like other ribbon buttons. And then in that enable rule, you can call the script and retrieve the data and show it at the banner as a global message. So that's supported workaround, but the only caveat is that this script will run each and every time the user navigates away. If the user click on the view list, the script will run once. The user double click and open the records, that script will run again. So it's probably not a good idea if you are using that high performance query and stuff. But if you are just showing maybe like a panel or stuff, maybe we can totally do it. And yeah, I came from a developer background, so I'm more of a more comfortable with working with code. But some of my team members, the functional consultants, they work with business rules to do the things. But what I found is that mixing the business rule and JavaScript, like, it never goes well. Like, it's really hard to troubleshoot, especially when one field is updating another trigger the JavaScript and update the other, and like it's really troubleshoot and find out the root cause and all these things. So my suggestion is always use the business rule when you have a really simple logic for this particular form, and when you don't have to do a lot of things, just start with the business rule. Once it's getting really complicated, just hand over to your dev to rewrite those. Like, it takes a little bit of time to rewrite, but it's really worth it in the long run when it comes to troubleshooting and investigation. And if you want to run the business rule only for a new record, you can have a condition checking like if the entity created on does not contain data. So that means this is the new form. So if you want to set the value only for a new records, or if you want to do hide and disable and show hide fields, you can use this kind of condition. But make sure to add that field to the form, because as you know, the business rules doesn't run if the field is not on the not on the form. And the entity scope level. So most of the time, recommend to use all these form level and just choose the forms to run the business rules. But if you have to put server-side logic, you can use the entity level. And that entity level business rule is equivalent to the pre-event. So what it does is it sets. So let's say you have a condition called if the condition column A is A and set the column B to B. So if you have this kind of thing and it's set in the same transaction, so it's like you create a record, it's like pre-create plugin. So you set in the same target. Well, so that audit log will show as one entry instead of updating the into the two different entries. So it's like just one event. So it's good in terms of way of setting the like the name field of the concatenating with the name field of the table instead of like some of the solutions that I saw, they use the real-time workflow to set the name. So once the record is created, it calls another update to save it. So which is like two transactions. So by using business rule entity scope, it's just one transaction. And Microsoft has a new way of updating the command bar. It's called like modernizing the modern command. And this is like for if you don't have to use the ribbon workbench and you can use bar fx and all these cool stuff in this new modern command. But whenever you do that, you just need to make sure that that command that you edit, they are per app. Because think about it, in order to go to that modern command UI, you need to select open the modern app and then edit it, and then go to that. From there, you can go to this. So all the buttons that you add in the modern command are only affected that particular app because it automatically creates this default command library. And let's say I add a button to the contact table for this app. And when I open the customer service app and I don't see that button anymore because this modern command is per app level. And application ribbons, if you want to apply to everything, let's say I want to apply it to the all button. I want to hide all the add existing buttons. You can use the add application ribbon to the solution and use it as in a ribbon workbench to update it. So that's one way, but make sure you don't break it because that's global. So if you break it, it will break in all the tables. And whenever you update and modify, use the existing out-of-the-box tables, make sure not to use the existing form. Let's say this is the managed form. So instead of using the same managed form, you just copy it, open it, and save it as a copy and create your own custom form. Because for some reasons, like there are really unexplained scenario, the changes that we deploy doesn't apply in that higher environments. When we deploy with the managed solution, the forms doesn't merge well, so there's always a headache by using those out-of-the-box forms and updating those. So there's a when you change the name of the column on the form, and let's say I changed the first name and last name to given name and surname. Sometimes it updates on the form and sometimes it doesn't. So whenever you change the column, make sure you check the dependency and go through all the forms and verify it updates. So it all depends on how the form makes some mistakes behind the scene. I also cannot pinpoint what's the behavior of the difference. Sometimes it automatically updates, sometimes it doesn't, even though we have never updated the label manually on the form. So just another tips to beware. And the description of this column equals the field of the tooltip of the field on the form. So let's say don't just put something that is referred to technical terms like, oh, this column is added for this change request in this sprint, and like just instead of referring to that, just enter something useful for the user, some description for this particular column. And when you add the lookup columns, always disable the most recently used items in the lookups, unless you really have a specific use case or scenario, or your lookup has only a few values. You can just disable it, and it will just show this empty sign. And then it was more easier for the user to like, okay, I need to search and enter to find out more, because sometimes the user doesn't click on this magnifying glass, they just click on this middle, and then it's like, oh, I only have like 2 records. I can't find like John Smith. So it's a kind of more easy user friendly to disable the most used items. And sometimes you have an problem where the first tab is not focused automatically and the second tab is focused. And if that happens, just check the expand this tab by default properties of the first tab. So this property is from like the UI before, legacy UI before the unified interface, where the tabs were just like expand and cascaded section. So if I'm not sure, it doesn't happen, it wouldn't happen for the custom new one, but if you happen to copy the existing out of the box ones, some of those settings might not be correct and you might experience that issue. And if you configure the forms, and one of the things always to just like clean up the related tab. Like if you have like 10 child tables and you see all these ones and you don't know which one is which relationship, or if you don't have any use of it, like social profile and all these things, you can either, you have an option to clean up in that each form level, like going through that related tab and remove the items, or you have, if the relationship, you don't want to show it in the related tab at all, you can choose to not display. And the timeline in the smaller apps are sometimes like doesn't make sense. Let's say phone call from insolvent. So, but this is the owner, the actual, not the actual caller. And so let's say I want to see more information about this appointment, like attendees and all these things, instead of just the owner. You have an option to customize it. So by using the form designer, you have an option to click on the timeline, and you can, for existing one, you can just like show height and change the label and stuff. But if you want to show the different fields and different forms, what you can do is you can, instead of default, you can choose the, let's say, appointment card form or email card form, phone call card form. And then in that card form, you cannot create additional card form, but you can edit the existing one, and you can add which form to show at the header and the body and the footer. So by doing that, you can just customize how you want to show it, those activities in your timeline. This grant, we have a quick view form, right? So we want to see the fields from the parent, and we have this form component control where we have the editable fields of the parent record. So let's say from the account, we can edit the phone number of the primary contact. But what we can do further is we can have the like do level up, like the grandparent fields. So what you can do is just put in the form that is embedded in the form component, you add the quick view form. So let's say from the account form, you can see the form component of the primary contact. Inside that, you have a quick view form of that contact's, let's say, the current user owner information. So you can have a 2-level up by using this, combining this quick view form and form component. And we have sometimes, most of the times, we have the requirement for add the address finder control to the projects. Some of those PCF controls, and you need to subscribe Google API or other location NZBAS and stuff. But in this blog post I mentioned, you can add the Microsoft out-of-the-box address finder control. So it's not available in the form editor, but you can add it by updating the form XML. So that's a way that you can edit it. But the only caveat is for New Zealand, it doesn't have it doesn't return the suburb value for some reason. So that's part of the Bing Map API issue. So we used to have this theme to differentiate different environments, dev, UAT, production, just not to mess up the data. But it stopped working when the new look is on. And what you're supposed to do is you are supposed to use the new modern theming as mentioned in this particular documentation. So it stores the data in the web resource, and you just need to point that web resource in the parameter. When you create the tables, always make sure to create the user or team own one. Never create the organization. Sometimes you think, okay, this is probably like just organization, just a reference data. But next time the organization expands to another department, and then they will have the same category, but they want to separate their own business unit. So then you're stuck. If you can't recreate once you create, you cannot change, right? But for user or team, you can always make it organization by setting it in the security role. So there's no harm creating as the user-owned custom table. Same thing when you create tries or like option sets, just always use the global. You'll never know like when you're gonna have to share with another table. So you have to always be prepared. Entity set name is like sometimes used in the web APIs or Power BI cloud flows, but there's no easy way to find it. Microsoft just recently added, maybe a few months ago, not a few months ago, maybe 6 months or a year. Now you can find it in the entity set name in the Solution Explorer. But if you have exception for level up, you can go to the menu and entity metadata, and you can have the entity set name for all of the tables. And when you walk on with the solution, keep the solution always clean. Don't add the components that you don't touch, especially out of the box ones. So, and also that sometimes the system automatically adds the components without you knowing that. So what happens is when you create, let's say, a relationship, right? I want to create a relationship to the user, and the user table is not there in my solution. So the system automatically adds, and sometimes it only adds with all the objects. So what you can do is before it adds automatically, you can add the user table without any component, empty shell, and then you create the lookup, and then it's not gonna add automatically anymore. Well, when you work on the solution, manage solution, make sure you're working the solution layer properly. Make sure each component is not included in both solution. So if each component is contained in both solution, and then try to avoid interdependency, because if you have over time, if you have like initially it's just like one dependency, one solution to another, but over time, like solution B also have a dependency to the solution A, and then what happened is you cannot create a new clean environment and import the solution as a managed solution, because solution A requires solution B and solution B requires the component from solution A. So that's really one thing to be aware. And when you use a managed solution and when have the need to recreate the columns, let's say I want to recreate it as a multi-line to a normal text box, and then just create it with a separate logical name, because it's really a headache to like import it as the managed solution and upgrade and delete it in the higher environments, and then import another batch to deploy the new column. So it is not really worth the effort. And when you start configuring the security roles, start with this minimum privilege role. So Microsoft has this in the app opener role mentioned in this URL, and you can use it to as a baseline, and you can copy it to create your own minimum privilege role. And make sure you don't give the delete privilege. Just deactivate this enough. If they really want to delete, just question the requirements and what's the case. And now Microsoft has released a new recycle bin feature that's still in preview. You can restore the deleted records once it's deleted accidentally. And when you assign a security role, try the layer approach. So the minimum role has all these minimum role to open the app, and then another role just to have access to particular tables instead of one combined role. So you might wonder, oh, that means I need to assign these multiple roles to multiple users. But no, like you can assign these roles to a team, and then add these users to a team, and then those users will have the same privilege. But in order to do that, you need to have the direct user basic access level, so that the user who are in the team with that security role are just the same as the users having the same security role. And for those teams, you can sync with the Microsoft Entra ID. So you don't really have to like manually add these users. You can have this your M365 admin defined with this Entra ID, like the salespeople team, right? And then you just assign it, and that users will be synchronized to the team within Dataverse. And the same thing for each environment, you just need to make sure you set up the security group so that this security group, these users, only those users will have access to this environment automatically. Otherwise, all the users will just show up in your user list. And sometimes you edit the user in the Entra group, but it's not showing up in the Dataverse. You cannot find it because that's a way Microsoft how it works. The AD group members are automatically created the environment when they first access to the environment. So, and then they are added to the root business unit. So that's why, like sometimes if you want to see those users automatically, you can use some automation to impersonate that as that user and log in and to be added into the environment. So these users and teams are added to the root business unit. So that means like they have their own like different, they can have the business user role, security role, but with the modernized business units change as you go through this video, it's a really good one, is that even though they are in the root business unit, they can be part of the team which is assigned to that particular role in this different PU. So they will be only have access to the data in those records, even though they are in the root business unit. Another random tips are about with the alternate keys. you can reference and you can retrieve and you can set the lookup using the alternate key without knowing the GUID. So that's useful when you have a set of reference table with a unique code. And that's also good when you want to prevent the duplicates, right? Because out of the box, duplicate detection rule will only show you the warning, but it will just let you save if you click OK. And when you register the plugin step, just register one image per plugin step, and you can specify all the columns in the same thing. There's no point registering multiple plugin steps. And when you have all these applications for the workflows, classic workflows, Power Automate cloud flows, make sure you assign it to the application user instead of you're having the own user, because once your user has license invoked and the account is disabled or for any reason, so all the process will be disabled. So that's always a good tip about it.